There is a very specific weight to a certified letter that makes your stomach drop before you even read the return address. Like your mailbox just whispered, "Congrats, buddy. You're about to spend money you didn't plan on spending." And in a perfectly normal, beige as toast American suburb, a certified envelope usually doesn't mean the feds or some thrilling secret mission. It means a neighbor with too much free time just picked you as their new personality. I'm standing on my porch with a coffee that's still trying to wake up the morning sun hitting my brand new cedar fence like it's showing off on purpose. 6 feet of clean, warm, honey-colored slats I built with my own hands. 12 blisters, and the kind of back pain that makes you rethink every life decision since middle school. When Stan the mailman walks up holding that envelope like it's a live grenade. Stan looked tired. Stan always looks tired, mostly because he delivers in a neighborhood where people measure grass height with rulers and treat HOA guidelines like scripture. "Certified Dave," he muttered, not making eye contact. "Sign here." I balanced my mug on the railing and signed the little digital pad. "Who's it from, Stan?" "The city, the feds." "Did I forget to pay my subscription to Breathing Air again?" Stan let out this heavy sigh, the kind of sigh that says he knows exactly what's happening, and he's disappointed in all of us as a species. "City code enforcement," he said. "But we both know who called it in." I looked past him, past his little white mail truck, and right across the street to Linda's house, beige, 2-story spotless driveway flowers, so perfectly arranged they looked scared to grow wrong. "Linda," I said, and the name tasted like spoiled milk. Stan leaned in like we were trading state secrets. "She was waiting by the mailbox when I pulled up at the start of the block," he whispered. Asked if I had the package for the resident at 402. "The resident," I repeated, like I'm an inmate. Stan shrugged like a man trapped in an endless loop of suburban nonsense. "I just deliver the paper, Dave. I don't write the news." He drove off, leaving me alone with that envelope and the creeping feeling that my peaceful morning just got drafted into a war it didn't ask for. I didn't open it right away. I just held it. I looked at my fence again because I needed to remember what joy felt like. It was straight, sturdy. It smelled like a forest. I had wrestled post-hole diggers into clay that was 90% dirt and 10% spite. I had argued with lumber prices that fluctuated like crypto. I had stained every board until my arms felt like noodles. And now I was holding a piece of paper that was probably going to tell me my masterpiece was illegal. I tore it open. Notice of violation. City code. Section this. Subsection that. Non-conforming aesthetic structure. Material inconsistency with neighborhood character. Obstruction of view. Streetscape. Remediate or remove within 30 days. Fine schedule attached. I read it out loud like maybe the words would sound less stupid if they had air around them. They didn't. They sounded even dumber. Then I looked at Linda's fence. White vinyl. Plastic. Soulless. It looked like the background of a medication commercial where everyone's smiling a little too hard and nobody's life has ever known friction. And she had the nerve, no, the confidence to call my natural wood inconsistent. I took a sip of coffee. It was lukewarm now, which felt correct because the universe had officially switched into petty mode. And here's the thing about war, especially suburban war, you don't win by being right. You win by being the last person still standing when everybody else gets exhausted and starts quietly pretending they never cared. So I didn't storm across the street screaming like an amateur. I went inside and paced my living room like a caged animal ranting at my dog Buster, who listened the way dogs do, deeply supportive, emotionally unavailable. "It's Cedar, Buster," I kept saying like he was going to testify in court. "Cedar. It's naturally rot-resistant. It ages beautifully. It's the George Clooney of woods." Buster licked his paw and stared at me like, "You're spiraling, man." "An obstruction of view. It's a privacy fence. That is literally the point. The only thing I was obstructing was Linda's ability to watch my life like it's her personal reality show, and frankly, that should have earned me a tax credit. Still, I needed to hear it from her mouth. Not because I was going to beg, but because I wanted that moral high ground before I dragged us both into the mud. So I put on my boots, my work boots, because they make me feel like a guy who builds things instead of a guy who writes software for a logistics company, and I walked across the street. Crossing that asphalt felt like crossing a minefield. Suburbs are quiet, but it's a loud quiet. You can hear the AC units humming and a lawnmower in the distance, and underneath it all you can hear judgment. "Morning, Linda," I called. She stopped sweeping her driveway. Except it wasn't normal sweeping. It was aggressive sweeping, like she was trying to erase the existence of dirt itself. She didn't turn right away. She did this slow, dramatic pivot like a battleship turret. Pink visor on mouth-tight eyes already loaded. "Oh, David," she said, not smiling. Linda doesn't smile. She bares her teeth, which is similar but evolutionarily distinct. "I didn't expect to see you up so early. Usually the construction noise doesn't start until noon." "It's 9:30, I said. "And the fence is finished." Hence the silence. "Finished." She let out a short laugh, sharp, dry. "Oh." I assumed that was the underlayer, the scaffolding. I felt something twitch in my forehead. "It's cedar, Linda. It's stained. It's finished." "It looks very rustic," she said, like she was diagnosing an illness. "It's wood," I said. "Wood is rustic. That's sort of its whole vibe." She leaned on her broom with this posture of concerned benevolence that always makes me want to flip a table. "We all want the neighborhood to look its best. Property values are up. The Smith sold for 50 over asking. We have a standard to maintain. And that barricade, it feels a little fortressy, a little hostile." "It's a fence," I said. "It keeps my dog in and the solicitors out." "It blocks the light," she snapped back. "And the style clashes with the vinyl. Everyone else has vinyl or wrought iron. The wood looks unfinished. It looks cheap." "Cheap!" I nearly laughed. "I spent $2,000 on those boards. I spent weekends. I spent cartilage. I spent my sanity." "I got a letter today," I said, lowering my voice. "From the city. About the fence." She did this fake little hand-to-chest move. "Oh, did you? Well, the city does drive-by inspections. They're very thorough." "Stan told me you were waiting for him," I said. Her eyes narrowed, and the benevolence evaporated like water on hot pavement. "Fine," she said. "Yes, I called it in. And I wasn't the only one." "You were definitely the only one," I said. "The Johnsons love it. Mike next door asked for the contractor's number because he thought a pro built it." "Mike has rusted cars on his lawn," she said, waving her hand like she was dismissing an insect. "His opinion is invalid." Then she stepped closer and pointed toward my house like a prosecutor in a courtroom drama. "It's an eyesore. It's ugly. It looks like a corral for livestock. I have to look at it every time I back out. It ruins the aesthetic flow of the street." "The aesthetic flow," I repeated. "Linda, we live in a subdivision built in 1998. The aesthetic flow is beige stucco and sadness." "Fix it," she snapped. "Paint it white or take it down. I have friends in code enforcement, David. I know the head of zoning. You can't win this." Then she turned her back on me and started sweeping again like she'd just executed me. I walked back home and I wasn't boiling. I was freezing. And that's when I do my best work. When I'm hot, I make mistakes. When I'm cold, I make plans. I took the day off work with a sudden case of acute bureaucratic inflammation and drove straight to the city clerk's office, a miserable building that smells like floor wax and despair. I took a number. I waited behind a woman arguing about a parking ticket like it was a constitutional issue. Finally, I got to the counter, and this clerk named Janice looked at my notice with the dead eyes of someone who's been stamping forms since the Carter administration. "You need to paint it," she said, bored. "Or seal it," I said. "Right, the code says sealed or painted." Janice blinked like I'd surprised her by reading. "Yeah, consistent finish, uniform color." "Define hardware," I said, because something in the printout caught my eye. "And what qualifies as accessibility signage?" Janice sighed, typed, printed out 3 pages of dense legal language, and slid it over like she was feeding a monster. I sat at a hard plastic table and read it like it was scripture, and there it was, this tiny little loophole with a smile on it. Decorative elements, hardware, structural reinforcements, exempt from color uniformity requirements if they serve a structural or accessibility function. And under signage properties can display signage related to safety address identification or disability accommodation without a permit as long as it doesn't exceed a certain size. I sat back slowly and this wicked little grin crawled across my face like it lived there. Linda wanted white paint. The city wanted finished. But the code said I could have hardware and accessibility accommodations. I wasn't going to paint "screw you" in neon orange. That would be crude. That would get me fined again. No. I needed to be subtle, inclusive, helpful. I needed Braille. If I used nails textured, raised tactile, driven into the wood to form Braille characters, they'd technically be hardware. And if the message was an accessibility feature, then who exactly was the city going to punish for being accommodating? I did the math on a napkin like a man planning a heist. Then I went to a salvage place on the edge of town, Rusty's, where OSHA regulations go to die, and asked the guy behind the counter for his nastiest nails. He sold me a barrel of old iron spikes from a barn teardown, rusted to hell. Heavy heads useless for framing, perfect for education. "What are you building?" he asked, eyeing me like I might be the next headline. "An education center," I said, and left with 5,000 rusty spikes and a plan that felt like legally protected vengeance. The next morning I called Sully. Contractor mustache built like a refrigerator drives a van that sounds like it's coughing up a lung. He shows up, looks at the bucket of rust, looks at my brand new cedar fence, looks at me and goes, "Let me get this straight. You want me to hammer literal garbage into your new fence?" "Yes," I said, "in a pattern, and you're paying me for this. I'll pay you double if we finish by noon." Sully picked up a nail, rubbed the jagged head with his thumb, and stared at me like I'd asked him to help me start a cult. "Dave, is this a mental health thing? Because usually people pay me to remove rusty metal." "It's art," I said. "It's texture. It's inclusive." I unrolled my graph paper blueprint Braille dots mapped across the fence like a battle plan. Sully squinted. "This looks like random dots." "It's Braille," I said. And that's when he glanced across the street and saw Linda peeking through her blinds like a surveillance camera. Sully's expression changed. 30 years of dealing with 1,000 Lindas lit up behind his eyes, and slowly he smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was a "finally someone's doing the Lord's work" smile. "What's it say?" he asked. "It's inspirational," I lied. "About minding one's path." "Uh-huh," Sully said, grabbing his hammer, the kind that could take down a bison. "Let's make some noise." We started at 8:05 a.m. And if you've never heard two grown men rapid-fire hammering iron spikes into cedar in a quiet cul-de-sac, let me tell you, it is glorious. Bang, 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 a rhythm echoing off vinyl siding like a drumline of pettiness. By 9 a.m., Linda was on her porch in a bathrobe, holding her phone like it was a weapon. I didn't even look at her. I put on noise-canceling headphones and listened to heavy metal because it felt spiritually correct. She finally stormed over, shrieking, "Stop this racket! What are you doing? You're ruining it!" Sully paused mid-swing, and I lifted one headphone ear like I was politely receiving a compliment. "Maintenance, Linda," I said, cheerful. "Structural reinforcement per code." "You're putting trash into the fence," she screamed. "It looks like disease." "It's industrial design," I said. "Very trendy." "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead," I called back, waving like we were neighbors at a barbecue instead of enemies in a Cold War. "Bring snacks." We kept going. The sun climbed. The smell of cedar mixed with metal and sweat. The pattern started to emerge, clusters of dots, abstract to anyone who didn't know what they were, and honestly, it was hideous, like the fence had developed a rash. Sully wiped his forehead and said, "Dave, this feels aggressive, like zombie apocalypse aggressive." "Wait until we apply the activator," I said. He blinked. "The what?" "Vinegar and hydrogen peroxide," I said. "I want the rust to drip. I want it to weep orange tears." Sully laughed a deep belly laugh. "You are a sick man. Remind me never to piss you off." By 11:45, we were done. 5,000 nails. My arm felt like jelly. My hand had cramped into a claw. Sully packed up, shook his head like he'd just participated in a crime, and drove off. And right on cue, 2 squad cars rolled up with flashing lights because Linda doesn't do reasonable. Linda does escalation. Officer Miller stepped out first. Good guy, hates paperwork. I'd met him once when my car alarm wouldn't shut up years ago. The second cop was young, sunglasses, haircut tight enough to cut glass, clearly hoping this was going to be exciting. Linda was practically vibrating in her yard, pointing like she'd discovered a bomb. "There, look at it. He's defaced the neighborhood. It's dangerous. It's insanity." Miller walked up, stared at my fence, reached out, touched a nail, head carefully, and then looked at me like a dad trying not to laugh at a kid's dumb stunt. "Dave," he said slowly, "why are there 5,000 rusty nails in your fence?" "Hardware," I said. "Structural integrity and accessibility." The rookie frowned. "Sir, this looks like a hazard." "It's on my property," I said. "And the nails aren't sharp. Historic iron spikes, arranged in a pattern." "A pattern?" Miller squinted. "Looks like measles." "It's Braille," I said. Linda scoffed, like I'd claimed it was ancient Greek. "Braille? That's ridiculous. He's lying. He's just being difficult because I reported him." "I'm being inclusive," I said loud enough for half the block. Miller sighed, turned to Linda. "Ma'am, it's a fence with nails. It's not on the sidewalk. I can't arrest a guy for bad decorating." "It's spite," she shrieked. "It's hideous." "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder," Miller said, and I swear the corner of his mouth twitched, and apparently in the finger of the beholder too. He looked back at me. "Dave, if somebody gets tetanus, you're going to have a bad time." "I'll put up a caution sign," I said. Miller shook his head. "Try not to start a civil war." And he left, dragging the rookie away like he didn't want him learning bad ideas. Linda stood there with her mouth open like she'd played her ace and found out the deck was rigged. She made this noise, half-gasp, half-wounded animal, spun around and slammed her door so hard I felt it through the pavement. That night, when the neighborhood went quiet and the streetlights buzzed, I pulled out my little chemistry set. Vinegar, hydrogen peroxide, salt, mixed it in a garden sprayer, and walked the fence line like a petty wizard. The moment that mist hit the nail heads, you could almost hear it, a faint, fizzing, microscopic, sizzling chemistry doing exactly what I asked it to do. "Grow my pretties," I whispered. "And I'm not proud of that, but I'm also not sorry." The next morning, I woke up to the sound of tires screeching like someone rounded the corner, saw my fence, and their brain hit the brakes before their foot did. I stumbled to the window with coffee in hand and, oh my God. Overnight, the nails had bloomed into this vibrant, crusty orange. Rust streaks ran down the cedar in jagged lines like the fence was bleeding. It looked like a prop from a post-apocalyptic movie. It looked like the wood had caught a tropical disease. A guy in a suit stopped his car, leaned out, snapped a photo, laughed, and drove off like he'd just witnessed performance art in the wild. Then Linda stepped outside in a floral housecoat with her tea. She looked up at the sky like she was checking if God was doing this. Then she looked across the street, and she dropped her cup. I heard it shatter. Ceramic on concrete, this little tink that sounded like her sanity breaking in the background. She didn't scream. The horror was too deep for noise. She just covered her mouth and stared like the rust might jump off and attack her. I walked out, grabbed my paper like it was any other Tuesday. "Morning, Linda," I called. "Humidity's really doing a number on the hardware, huh?" "It's leaking," she choked. "It's patina," I said. "It's maturing." "It looks like a crime scene," she finally screamed. "I think it adds character," I said. "Very wabi-sabi." She didn't walk back inside. She ran. And that's when the story took a turn I didn't plan for, because I figured it would just be me versus Linda versus the slow grind of bureaucracy. But once something goes viral, it stops being yours. It becomes everybody's. I posted pictures online, wide shots, close-ups, the dot patterns, captioned it honestly. Neighbor reported my handmade cedar fence for being ugly, so I used 5,000 rusty nails to write "Mind Your Own Business" in Braille as an accessibility feature. Called it the Wall of Inclusivity. Within hours, strangers were cheering. People were driving by like it was a tourist attraction. A local news van showed up, reporter smiling like she'd found ratings gold, and the camera rolled right as Linda stormed out in a blazer trying to regain control of her own narrative. The reporter, Veronica, looked at Linda and, I swear, hit her with the most brutal question I've ever heard delivered with a perfect TV smile. "Ma'am, the homeowner says it's for accessibility. Do you hate the blind?" I almost choked. Linda sputtered, panicked, and suddenly she wasn't the noble guardian of property values anymore. She was just angry, exposed, saying the quiet part out loud on camera. "It's for me. He did it to spite me." And there it was, the truth broadcasted with a microphone and a ring light. Not neighborhood standards, not community, just control. 2 days later, I got summoned to a zoning board emergency hearing. A tribunal, basically, because my fence had become a public nuisance and a local legend. Town hall was packed. People held handmade signs. A couple visually impaired folks showed up with guide dogs, and I'll be honest, that hit me. Somewhere along the way, my petty war had accidentally invited real people into it, and suddenly, this wasn't just me being mad at Linda. It was a whole conversation about who gets to decide what belongs, what's acceptable, who gets to control the view. Linda sat front row with a binder thick enough to stop a bullet. They called my name. I stood up in a suit looking respectable, like a man who definitely didn't whisper "grow my pretties" into a garden sprayer. The chairman looked exhausted. "Mr. Miller, explain why there are 5,000 rusty nails in your fence." I stepped to the podium. "The code states my fence must be finished," I said. "It also allows hardware and accessibility features. I created a tactile interface." A board member leaned forward. "We've heard reports it contains profanity." Linda smirked like she'd set a trap. And for a second I felt that cold, clean fear, because the truth was, yeah, it said what it said. And if the board framed it as harassment, I could lose. So I smiled and said, "It's not profanity. It's a quote. A meditation on the sanctity of private life." "Can you translate it?" the chairman asked. "I can do better," I said, and then I pulled my twist out of the air like a magician. Because the internet is weird and wonderful and occasionally useful. I brought an expert. People murmured. Linda's eyebrows shot up. And then Gary stood. Gary was a guy I'd met online 2 days earlier. Gary was blind. Big voice, confident presence, cane in hand, wearing a shirt that literally said "Rusty Justice," because the internet has no shame, and I respect that. Gary walked to the front like he owned the room. And the board leaned in, because suddenly this wasn't just a fence. This was optics. This was PR. This was the last thing a zoning board wants a disability rights moment on the evening news. The chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Gary, what does the fence say? Gary paused, dramatic as hell, and then boomed, It says, mind your own business. The room erupted. Laughter, gasps. Even the chairman had to hide a smile behind his hand. Linda turned purple. That's a lie. He's telling me to shut up. I'm telling the world to find inner peace, I said into the microphone, calm as a monk with a grudge. And I'd like to add, if you rule against this, you're essentially declaring Braille offensive. The board huddled in whispers. The news camera in the back zoomed in like a predator. Finally, the chairman sighed like a man surrendering to the absurdity of modern life. While the fence is unconventional, he said, the accessibility language in the code is broadly written, perhaps too broadly written. We will amend it for the future. Linda inhaled like she'd been slapped. But he continued, as it stands today, the structure falls within the technical letter of the law. And since we do not regulate matters of taste unless obscene, complaint dismissed. He banged the gavel. The fence stays. The room cheered. Gary raised his cane like a victory flag. Linda gathered her binder with shaking hands and shot me a look that promised 1,000 future complaints, then stormed out like a villain whose monologue got cut off. The next day, the hype died down. The internet moved on to a piano-playing cat, because of course it did. The news van left. The street went quiet again. And standing there alone with that fence rust, darkening streaks, deepening the message literally written in metal, I felt this weird, unexpected calm. Because here's the lesson I didn't realize I was learning until it was already in my bones. A lot of people don't actually care about standards or values or community. Those are just polite costumes power wears when it wants to control you. The moment you push back, the costume slips, and what's underneath isn't always evil. Sometimes it's just fear. Fear that if they don't police your fence, they won't be able to police anything. Fear that the world is messy and control is the only way they know to feel safe. And the bitter truth is, kindness works on kind people. But with bullies, especially the clipboard kind, you need boundaries. Real ones. Sometimes literal ones. So I did one final thing. I screwed a small gold plaque into the cedar right beside the start of the Braille. Nothing flashy, just enough to make the point permanent. It read, the Hatcher Memorial Wall dedicated to the pursuit of privacy. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. The rest is just noise. That afternoon, Linda came out to get her mail. She walked straight to the mailbox without looking left, grabbed her letters, turned around, and went inside. No sweeping, no staring, no pink visor of war. Just retreat. I patted one of the nail heads like it was a loyal guard dog. Good boy, I whispered, because I'm apparently that person now. Then I went inside, grabbed a cold beer, and sat by the window watching the grass grow like the world's pettiest retired man. And I'll tell you, there's nothing more satisfying than watching someone who tried to control your life learn they can't even control where their eyes land anymore. Now, I got to ask you something, because this is where people split right down the middle. When someone abuses power in the name of rules, where's the line between defending yourself and becoming just as cruel as they are? Is my fence justice? Or is it just revenge with better paperwork? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me if you think I went too far, or if you would have gone further. And if you've ever had a Linda in your life, I want to hear that story too, because I promise you, I'm not the only one living on a street where the grass is trimmed and the drama is wild.